All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So, the final installment of the Trayvon Martin documentary, Rest in Power. Let's jump right into it. Now, if you've been following all of these episodes I've been doing, in the very first episode, I said what I hoped that they would be able to tackle and really cover. Because I wasn't sure where the documentary was going to be going after the first episode. I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out. But overall, I want to say they covered the majority of what I was hoping they would cover. And did it in a way where you were able to understand the climate of the country and you were able to understand what was going on in the world at the time. The only beef I had with the series as a whole was that sometimes they gave too much power to the wrong people and gave them too much camera time to put out their certain views, and it got under my skin. You know, a lot of the people who were on the defense team got too much camera time, and some of the statements that they made were so problematic because they really spoke about what was happening as if it was Trayvon Martin on trial. That got under my it got under my skin, got on my nerves. However, I personally think it still needed to be there because you're able to see exactly why the problems that exist are here today. Because even with everything that's happened, even with all the evidence, even with everything that went down, people are still set in their ways and believe things went down a certain way. Like, the funniest example is the comments left on my reviews of this series. White people just refuse to accept that George Zimmerman ain't shit and ain't ever been. Like, fuck that motherfucker. Like, he is just terrible. I'm sorry to cuss, but that's how I feel about him. Like, he was just such a horrible person. And it was so good that this episode showcased all of the things that George Zimmerman did after he got away with murder. And it's like people were still trying to give justification about why Zimmerman got off, and people were in the comment section like, oh, your perception is warped and you're just set in your ways and you don't want to hear things out. And I'm like, listen, if the tables were turned, which is, hold on, let me backtrack. This gets me about the part with the what's her name? Angela Corey. So the verdict comes out. They're doing a press conference. She comes out there like it's the Grammy Award. She's over here giving thank yous and speeches. And I'm like, see, this is starting to prove what I said in the last episode about how I felt that the case was pretty much thrown on purpose. It literally, Zimmerman was never supposed to be charged, to be honest. They just charged him so protesters would shut up. That was pretty much the plan. And so I feel like the idea was give him some bootleg trial and then, he'll get on off and then we can go on back to our merry way. And that's what I got from her when she's out here giving a thank you. I'm like, what are you thanking people for? This was a trial where parents lost their child. It's a trial that sparked an entire wave of just conversation around race. It's a trial that brought out the worst in people, and you want to stand up here and thank people like you done did something. When in reality, it's the people that were working on your team that caused a lot of the havoc and a lot of the problems to begin with, as a response to what George Zimmerman did. So I had an issue with that. And then there was that interview where they're asking her and the prosecutor to describe certain things in one word. And they ask her, what about the verdict? And she says, our system. I was like, what? Our system? Actually, you know what? She right. Yeah, that's y'all system, her system. Because that system ain't for all of us. Like, that system wouldn't have worked for me. Had the tables been turned, let's just say it was me. If I were in George Zimmerman's shoes and that would have been a white child, and I mean, let's just say everything went down exactly how it went down in this situation. I'm in my neighborhood. I see a white kid walking around. I don't know. He's walking around with a hoodie he got from Hot Topic. I'm nervous. He might be on meth. I'm scared. And so I go and I call 911 and say there's been some break-ins. Some white kids been breaking up in everybody's house. I don't know what to do. I'm a little nervous. The assholes always get away. And I go and I follow this random white kid. And whatever happens between me and the white kid, somehow I shoot him in the chest. And I claim that he was banging my head on the concrete. And I have a tiny little gash on the back of my head. And this, that, and the third. And I feared for my life and I wanted to stand my ground. I can guarantee you right now, my black ass would be under the jail. Under the jail. There wouldn't have even been any question. White America would have not had to go out and protest and do White Lives Matter or anything like that because the police would have had me locked up right then and there. So when she said that bit about our system, I'm like, I wonder who she's talking about with that our, because I don't think it's inclusive of everybody. But it is what it is. Moving on. And so I did want to talk about the whole idea of Black Lives Matter because I've said this a million times. A lot of people, I like that they showcase the amount of backlash that the idea of Black Lives Matter got. And when I think back to when Black Lives Matter started, and I still hear it now, and it's so funny because if you're a black person giving any kind of social commentary on any social media platform about what goes on in the country, people automatically assume you're a spokesperson for Black Lives Matter. I can't tell you how many people want me to answer for that organization. I'm like, I'm not in Black Lives Matter. What you want me to say? But I've always said, or actually the documentary says it as well. They talk about pretty much it had nothing to do with the phrase Black Lives Matter, but who the people were that were saying it. Pretty much the fact that they were black. Because I've always said, had Black Lives Matter started out with the phrase All Lives Matter instead, people would have still had a problem. Like when everything went down, if they would have just been going out and pushing All Lives Matter, white people would have still got pissed and said, they already matter. You guys are just being dramatic and you're trying to erase us. All lives are I'm telling you, it would have been a fight. So whether they started it with Black Lives Matter, our lives, all lives, American lives, the children's lives, people's lives, they would have still had a problem with it no matter what. And I mean, this episode really went in when it just talked about the mindset of so many Americans. I love the line that the white guy said where he said pretty much, we've been brainwashed to be racist and we can't accept that. I said, I'm glad somebody said it, because every time I say it, people think I'm crazy and people think I'm racist. God, the comments on that Colin Kaepernick video, I haven't even looked at yet, but I know I'm probably getting cussed out and being called every kind of N-word on that comment section, and I'm racist and this, that, and the third. But there's an entire demographic of white people in this country right now, based on what I've seen in this documentary, what I've seen in real life, what I see on social media, what I see on the internet, just from some of the messages and emails that I get from random people who have somehow researched and tried to find my entire personal information and sent death threats and all that crap. There's some crazy people out there. That's all I'll say. And when they got to that bit about how 30 million Americans in this country align with the ideas of white supremacy, there's 30 million of y'all walking around, and then y'all want to sit here and tell me that I'm crazy because I'm calling stuff out as I see it? Absolutely not. There's a country, 30 million people who align with the ideas of white supremacy. And you want to sit here and pretend that there's not an issue with race in this country. You want to sit here and pretend that the only reason race exists is because black people are complaining about it. As you saw the examples of the people they were using, so many of the white people in this documentary felt that there was an attack on white people, that they were losing things. I'm like, what are y'all losing? The fact that you can't be racist in public anymore? Like, what else? What else are you losing? And listen, this is not to be an attack on white people, because I'm really speaking to a specific pocket of white people. If you're not in that pocket, you shouldn't be offended by what I'm saying. If you're offended, you might need to go back and reevaluate a few things as well, okay? Because I don't understand why so many of you have going out of your way to justify a lot of the nonsense that has happened in this country in regards to race and how there's so much aggression towards black people. Like, there's a ton of white people who feel that in this current moment, discrimination and racism is just as prevalent against them as it is against black folks. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Y'all don't have any structural backing to back that at all. There's no structural policy to back that. And don't bring up affirmative action, because that mess was created for white women. So save it. Moving on. But then when you look at all the things George Zimmerman did after he got away, you know, he got in the situation with his girlfriend's father, and he went out there with the shotgun about to shoot up everybody, and she's scared, and they dropped the charges. I mean, they even help him out of the car. Are you okay? Yeah, I just have back problems. So you didn't have back problems when you went to go fight Trayvon, but now all of a sudden your back messed up. Anyway, so you got that going on. Then the other girlfriend, the same girlfriend, said he choked her. And it was interesting that the police officer questioned her, like, well, why didn't you report that? And I'm like, see, that's another issue that happens when you talk about, and that's a bigger conversation where you just talk about sexual assaults and everything like that, or physical assaults against women. This is why a lot of women don't come out and say anything, because they always get criticized, or they get judged, or somehow the blame is somehow pushed on them for the actions of what the other person did. Even outside eyeing her anyway, like, oh, so you still stuck with him. You knew he was this kind of person. You stuck with him, huh? Okay. And then the next girlfriend who, what did he take her cell phone and throw it or something? And she was like, he's just crazy. And I'm like, and you were crazy for dating him. You knew this guy killed somebody, and that's probably what attracted you to him, and you started dating him like an idiot. So I want to say that's what you get. But, and those charges were dropped. And then it was like he just continued to do so many things. And then the situation with, the police got to pull him over and stop him because he done showed up to some bar with a gun. Like, dude is crazy. So much evidence of him just doing different things. The stuff I read recently about him and the death threats to Beyonce and the death threats to the people that are doing the documentary. Like, dude has all of the evidence that shows this man is an aggressor. This man is violent. This man is potentially, well, we don't got to say potentially because he really did kill somebody. This man is dangerous, and this man is racist. All of that together. And folks are still going out of their way to give justification for George Zimmerman. They want Trayvon Martin to be a thug so bad. And it's interesting because, unfortunately, Trayvon Martin was this nice little suburban kid who pretty much acted in the way that suburban kids act. And they want him to be some violent kid that they've seen on The Wire so bad. And there's not a lot of evidence to support that. However, there's an overabundance of evidence proving that George Zimmerman just wasn't shit. Like, I can't. white people, y'all got a lot to answer for. Y'all really do. Woo! And I'm talking to that pocket. And I'm also talking to the people who are complacent and complicit with that as it takes place, who say nothing and are just fine, but they got an issue with me saying something. You know, they'll be quiet about racism. Then when people like me call out racism, then they want to come and start pounding and typing dissertations in my comment section, but they've been silent about everything else. They've been silent watching what's going on with the climate of the country and the Charlottesville situation and all these crazy people going and hitting folks with cars and white supremacy. Y'all got whole white supremacy sites, tons of them. As a matter of fact, my videos always end up on their stuff and then they come and flood my channel. Like, this is all the stuff y'all got going, but y'all want to be portrayed as innocent victims of black aggression so bad because finally people are calling y'all out on stuff. Finally, we're in a position where we don't get lynched for standing up for ourselves anymore. I mean, we still get lynched technically by the police and by policy and a few other things. However, there's not public lynchings with us hanging off a tree because we decided to stand up for ourselves anymore. We're not getting lynched because we decided not to step off the sidewalk because a white person was coming and looked down at the floor. Instead, we stayed on the sidewalk and kept walking. You know what I mean? Like, people got lynched for that stuff. And so it's a different day and age. And I think a lot of white people are not used to being called out. Now, see, black folks, our experience, we've just been told we ain't shit every day. Every time we turn on the TV, we see examples of stereotypes that are made about us. We see it in the news all the time. Like, that's all our experience has been. We go and look at the history books and we're always told that we're inferior. Millions and millions of examples. There's tons of things that go on. White people aren't used to that, which is why I think there was so much backlash against Trayvon Martin. A lot of people really felt that was a sad situation. What made so many people start supporting George Zimmerman was the fact that black people started calling out racism. And all of a sudden, that was like, oh, wait a minute, those are the wrong words. And then all of a sudden, they could see the good in George Zimmerman. So I was like, y'all are full of crap. Absolutely. I enjoyed the piece with the white dude and the Confederate flag. That was enjoyable to watch. Watching him try to explain why the Confederate flag is not racist and failing at doing it. Failing. Couldn't really give a real history of the Civil War. And then I just saw the research about how there's so many people who have no ties to the Confederacy. Their family lineage has nothing to do with the South, and they still stand behind that flag. Why? Because that flag is a symbol of racism. So I'm glad they were able to pull the origin of where that flag comes from, what the original meaning of it was. Like, there's just too much evidence. But the problem is, folks will still stand there and say, it was my heritage. Okay, you know what? Whatever. And the fact that George Zimmerman, he pretty much exploited the fact that he killed somebody. He's over here selling, or signing bags of Skittles, selling and auctioning the gun that he killed the boy with. Just what a terrible, the karma that is coming. The karma that is coming to George Zimmerman. The karma that is coming. That's all I'm going to say. That karma is on its way, George Zimmerman. Get your life right. But the good thing, I think, that comes out of this, even though it's not even really good, because it's sad that the burden of, how do I word this? It's sad that some people don't get the luxury of just living. They have to live and fight for a purpose all the time. And so many black people, that's our experience. So with Trayvon Martin's parents, they became extremely active and they started all these different organizations and did all these different things. And as great as it is that, they're doing things in the community, it's sad that people don't just get to live their lives. A lot of people have to go out of their way to stand for causes and causes that I think shouldn't have to exist, because if America is the country it claims to be, a lot of the problems we have should not exist, but they do. And nobody's doing anything to change them. And so now the burden is on the citizens of the country to fix it, because the government's not fixing it. The elected officials don't fix it. Our tax dollars go to all the wrong things, so that doesn't fix it. The education system is some BS, so that's really not fixing anything and educating people. I can't understand the fact that there's 30 million people right now in this country that align with white supremacist views. What the hell? I'm not shocked, but I'm just like, how? Just absolutely crazy. So this documentary has created a lot of conversations, and I think sometimes it was hard to watch, but I think it needed to be seen. It needs to remind people of what's going on in this country. And it's bigger than just Trayvon Martin. It's literally the entire operation of how this country just matriculates and runs. So many issues. Anyway, I'm out. I'm going to sleep. Subscribe, share your 2 cents.